Good morning, sunshine. It's Tuesday. I'm here to talk about Chris Voss' book, and this is about never split the difference, negotiating as if your life depended on it. Um, so, we're here at the park near Blinkenia Beach while I'm still on vacation. Anyway, books about career, commerce, and culture is what I love about reading. Not necessarily following all their advice, but um, hearing some of their point of view really makes me think better. Um, so, in this book by Chris Voss, he talked about never split the difference, negotiating your life as if it depends on it. Um, Chris Voss is the number one kidnapping negotiator in the world, international kidnapping negotiator, and is the head of the FBI in that department for 20, 30 years. And in this book, he mentioned that negotiating is a very emotional characteristic of a person, and it's our strongest weapon in saving lives. But not only that, to every aspect of life: business, career, family, finance. People tend to think that negotiating is something reserved for corporate boardrooms, but the truth is, humans are, it's every part of humans' life. Uh, what the police do on hostage situation, how to deal with your partner, your kids. A simple sense of negotiation is having a good interaction or communication and with a specific outcome on what you want something done. Um, maybe a raise in salary, or maybe you want your kids to go to bed early, like Sam was up from 11 o'clock, and I've been telling him to sleep by 10, and so I keep negotiating with him. I wasn't aware of it before. Now I do. Every time you talk, you're actually negotiating because you want something done. It's more than just a mathematical logic. It's very irrational because not all humans are rational, or not every day we're rational, and and we're not logical on some things. So it's a very complicated life, and uh, we are very unpredictable, and we go very spontaneous and wild sometimes. Um, he mentioned about Daniel Kahneman, the book of Think Fast and Slow. I also reviewed and summarized that book. In that research, in back in the 70s, it's a long research, like 10 years, 15 years. Daniel Kahneman, Think Slow, something is the name of the book, mentioned something about cognitive bias. We all have an irrational bias, um, and we have at least 150 types of biases. So-called framing effect. Like when you see a person, you already made an assumption. So when you're talking to someone, just by looking, you already made some assumption. That's just rational. I think he has to go. so, so what it is we should be aware of that we have some bias, and so you should learn how to control that. Successful negotiation is building, I guess it's not going, is about building trust and getting the right information um, from the person you wanted to bargain with. So when you go to the bargaining table, you talk about the situation and you do counterpart. Naturally, during this process, um, you are prepared in some bends in the road, so to speak. So, for instance, when you know that the hostage wants to behave in certain ways, you were told he wasn't, he would tell you some incorrect information. They will try to sway you into something. He mentioned, I won't talk about the situation, about how he dealt with the hostage back in 1980, I think, when they robbed a ATM machine, and he was able to sway the robbers into giving up, in spite of the robbers or the thieves, hostages giving him information. So the message of the book is to really, how can you establish a rapport with your person you're negotiating with? The first way is to have a good tone of voice. Your tone of voice can affect your negotiation. If you're upset, it will reflect on how you are talking to the person. It makes sense if you change your intonation. Always be friendly, smile, because if you smile or you're happy, it will show up in every conversation. After all, it's also a comfort to the person you are negotiating with. So, at a certain point, let me sit down here quick because my arm is getting tired. So, at a certain point, you need to be friendly with the negotiator, with the other part. Linky, come up here. So, and certain calmness is good when you're doing negotiating, and be empathetic. You know, put your position in that person's life or in that person's situation, and try to get to know him, and then just talk and listen. That's the third thing he talked about, is being a good listener. Understand the state of emotions of the other person you're talking to. He also mentioned about how psychotherapist does this when they talk to their client, talking about tactical empathy, which is getting into perspective of the let's say the robber or your son, trying to put him in bed early. Try to be on that perspective and be calm when you are talking to them. There's so many study that prove this in the book, by Chris Voss. And in fact, when during the leadership summit, we invited Sam to just watch the entire session, and so he knows I'm using this tactic to him. So another point he talked about is don't accept the other party's demands. Like when your son says, "Oh, I took a nap so I can stay up till 11 o'clock." That's usually Sam's excuse. Um, and because I've been telling him at least sleep 9 hours, and don't give in to that. Uh, don't split the difference. Always, whatever you ask for, you get it. Um, and because if you split the difference, so what's the point? You didn't really negotiate. You give in. You compromise your what you wanted to do. So so for the same reason, it is essential that you take your time when you're, let's say, your counterpart sets a deadline. You can follow that, and it's important that you avoid certain things. You avoid the deadline. Uh, be flexible, and that's when you start negotiating. He mentioned a lot of this on the kidnapping, where the negotiator asking for 15, I think 5 million, and they weren't able to get it, and they were able to free. So be prepared for the extreme when you go on negotiation. Expect the worst, and then try to be in the side of the other person whom you're negotiating with, whether your family, your boss, your partners, and when you're in a supermarket, or I mean shopping overseas. By the way, um, I talked about that too on the review about his ex-girlfriend or his girlfriend, about having the best deal because of using this type of skill. So there's another book called You Can Negotiate Anything by Herb Cohen. Um, it's an old book in the 80s. Got hold of it, never actually, maybe I browsed through it, never read it. So try to negotiate for a win-win situation. That's the bottom line. Never split the difference, Chris Voss. So, time for a walk, Blinky. Have a great run.